So this is 8 minutes to 1 o'clock GMT on Thursday, the 3rd of November 2022. This is part one of the Khoodeelaar television channel, Khoodeelaar. You can look at the spelling and you can see the Khoodeelaar. It has got 6 vowels. Khoo, Khoodee, Laar. Khoodeelaar. Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo. Baby Angel Geronimo is the bestest witness of in the world of the depravity and corruption criminality that is the UK government. So we shall be updating on all the items that we have been talking about in the recent past. And I have to point out the fact that I'm absolutely impressed by the cartoon done for the Times on Wednesday, or published on Wednesday, the 2nd of November 2022. That is on the date just gone, by the cartoonist Peter Brooks. Now, Peter Brooks, of course, works for Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch. But despite the fact that he works for the Dirty Diggers Times newspaper, he, I think, has retained, Peter Brooks has retained a sense of ethics and morality, which, when combined, he actually deploys with stunning effectiveness and relevance, which is what he has done on the cartoon that he has done about Suella Braverman. Now, Suella Braverman is being painted or portrayed by the Peter Brooks cartoon. Let me have a look. Let me have another look. I've been looking at it and working on it, and I have seen that now. The heading is, the main bold heading is "We can do it." And then it says, keep the blighters out. Now, blighter is a word that is colloquial English, and it is probably more associated with the so-called kind of ruling class in England. Not in Scotland, not in Wales, not in the Northern Ireland, but England, a part of England. And Suella Braverman is dressed as a kind of crazy, insane fighter for the anti-invasion force. And she looks really ferocious, and she looks stupid, and she looks crazy. We can do it. Keep the blighters out. And on her arm, right arm, Peter Brooks has actually done two things. One is he has put this face of death, and on her fingers, left fingers, which are holding her shirt, right hand shirt, just above the skull, death skull image, is the word hate. Now, this is not the image of an Indian, Indian in the subcontinent, in the kind of historic regional sense of the term, not Indian in the political sense. But Goa is part of the Indian subcontinent. and she is from Goa or Goan origin. She may not have come from Goa herself. She may not have been born in Goa, but she is from Goa or Goan origin, Goan stock, Goan ethnicity. And she looks crazy in the Peter Brooks portrait. Now, who is he thanking for this inspiration? Let's see what Peter Brooks is actually referring to as the inspiration. Peter Brooks is the Times' kind of main cartoonist, apparently. There are other cartoonists as well, and some of them too kind of manage to come across as effectively as he has done in this one. And there is another cartoonist on the Independent. Now, the Independent is no longer printed, it's only accessible online. And there is a Brown, there is a man called Brown, whatever the Brown is, and the cartoonist Brown. And cartoonist Brown has been consistently, factually on the spot about congenital liar Boris Johnson and his lot. Now let's see where Peter Brooks is drawing the kind of, who is he thanking? Because what he does, he actually refers to the source of the inspiration or the relationship between the cartoon he has drawn and the inspiration or some of the ideas that he has taken from others. He is frank enough to acknowledge that, which is absolutely there. Okay, now this one is after J. Howard Miller. Now we shall go to J. Howard Miller and see what he is talking about in there. Howard Miller's must be a kind of a template, and Howard Miller must have left a kind of imprint. And Peter Brooks, obviously, J. Howard Miller. J. Howard Miller. Aha! So there is the lady then. He has got her from there. It's an almost identical, he has copied it from a Howard Miller cartoon, which is exactly the word "we can do it." And there is this woman with this kind of headgear, headscarf that he has put on the "we can do it" is "we can do it" is an American World War II wartime poster produced by J. Howard Miller in 1943 for Westinghouse Electric as an inspirational image to boost female worker morale. The poster was little seen during World War II. It was rediscovered in the early 1980s and widely reproduced in many forms, often called "We Can Do It," but also called Rosie the Riveter, after the iconic figure of a strong female war production worker. Okay, so the "We Can Do It" we're doing this thoroughly, are we not? Well, somehow the search has directed us to Julia Gillard. We don't want to know anything about Julia Gillard, not in this stage anyway, the Australian politician. Now, "We Can Do It" image was used to promote feminism and other political issues beginning in the 1980s. The image made the cover of the Smithsonian magazine in 1994 and was fashioned into a US first class mail stamp in 1999. It was incorporated in 2008 into campaign materials for several American politicians and was reworked by an artist in 2010 to celebrate the first woman becoming Prime Minister of Australia. The poster is one of the 10 most requested images at the National well, I mean, this is why Julia Gillard was kind of accessed because it's the Australian woman politician. Conflating her as Rosie the Riveter, Doyle was honored by many organizations, including the Michigan Women's Historical Center and Hall of Fame. However, in 2015, the woman in the wartime photograph was identified as then 20-year-old Naomi Parker, working in early 1942 before Doyle had graduated from high school. Doyle's notion that the photograph inspired the poster cannot be proved or disproved. So neither Doyle nor Parker can be confirmed as the model for the We Can Do It. But there is a completely different kind of imprint of the different aspect that Peter Brooks has done. He imposed the Hitler, Nazi, nasty word, hate, which is completely contradictory to whatever We Can Do It originally was used for in its various forms. So he does acknowledge the J. Howard Miller's work and the woman model, etc., about the food factory worker. But he departs completely. And he introduces the monstrosity in the form of Suella Braverman. Now, we call her, not anyone else in police or in the media so far has called her that, but we call her Suella, Cruella, Eviler, Eviller, like more evil than before. And it all kind of rhymes with the Suella. Now, what has happened with the poster that Peter Brooks has done? He has updated everything and he has done it effectively. We can do it. And what she is doing now, the eviler Cruella Suella, is probably registering a fan base which will be singing her praise, and she will be leading them. She will be leading them to confront the invading little children, vulnerable women, and man escaping persecution, poverty, hunger, and destitution. And they will confront these people who will be in the middle of the channel between France and England. And they will sink them. We can do it. And they will sink as many of the dinghies and as many little boats as they can do. And Suella, Cruella, Evila will get to be known as Evila by the time they sink every new boat. Now, on Wednesday, the 2nd of November 2022, this very ignorant Rishi Sunak, he said that Suella was getting on with the job. What on earth could the idiot mean by the job? What job was he referring to? Because it is precisely the point that she is not getting on with the job. That the rampas, the rows, the calls for her to be sacked and for her to resign have begun. She's unfit. She's totally unfit for the purpose and she's unfit for the quote job. If by job Rishi Sunak means in any way the job of the interior ministry in the United Kingdom. She has created absolute contradictory positions right across parliament and right across the so-called media and right across the government and right across the society. She is the hate inciter. Hate inciter. Who are the people that she wants to incite hate against? According to that man who reportedly was found to have killed himself after throwing the 3 petrol bombs in Dover, the man from High Wycombe, the inspiration for him included his hatred for Muslims. Think about that. He conflated his hatred of Muslims with his hatred of all things migrant or immigrant. Now, the job that the idiot Sunak used entails very serious responsibilities in the United Kingdom as a state. It does not include, it never has included, and it can never sustainably include anything to do with the Home Secretary going to Dover or in Surrey Coast, and inciting the local zombies into hating people that are hardly visible in the middle of the channel. When I did the broadcast on Channel 4 television in January 1992, that is exactly 30 years, 30 years and 9 months ago. As always, I've been very busy and hardly the time or the space to settle down anywhere. I didn't even have access to a proper, comfortable cafe whose table I could use to write the script. But I managed to write the script, which had to be limited to 1 page. And I wrote the script, and nobody on the face of the earth has said in the length of 3 minutes anything like what I said in that broadcast in January 1992. I said that the West, meaning state governments, not ordinary people, state governments like the United Kingdom, like France, like Germany, like Sweden, and all these Western European countries. I said that these people, these governments, and their kind of contents, that is, the ministries, the prime ministers, etc., had to take drastic action to stop the sufferings of the people in the countries of origin in Africa and Asia. stop the hunger in those countries, stop the lack of civil liberties in those countries, stop the lack of democracy in those countries, to begin with, to mention only three. And I said that those actions would cost money, but the money that would be spent in creating stability, peace, harmony in those countries would be very small indeed compared to the money that would be spent in engaging in this hate war against these individuals trying to cross the channel. The French channel, English channel, let's call it the channel. And during Wednesday, there was another kind of player who entered the scene, let's say. It's the Albanian president or prime minister, whoever, whatever the post. And he told the UK government in no uncertain terms that stop blaming Albanian people for your failures in governing your country. Now, of course, the Albanian president or prime minister was as narrow-minded as his counterpart or parts in the UK, because he was only concerned about the numbers of Albanians being adversely commented on. Neither Suella Braverman nor her kind of colleagues, nor indeed Keir Starmer, came anywhere near talking about the situation that I summarized in 3 minutes of my broadcast on Channel 4 news slot, called slot, after the 7 o'clock news in January 1992. What are these people made of? Are they made of complete straw? Are they all from Lilliput? How stupid can they be? For 30 years and 9 months, I've watched all these commentators, all these heads of state and governments, and all these morons like Priti Patel, and now the Ibilar Cruella Suella. None of them has come anywhere near doing the recognition of the truth, which alone will begin the process of stopping the large numbers of people, millions and millions of people, who are homeless, stateless, and desperate right across the 2 continents in the main. That is the basic, simple truth. Nobody on the kind of government benches in the UK or their counterparts anywhere else in the West, including, say, across the Atlantic in the USA or in Canada. These are the destinations. Now, the reason why these are chosen as possible destinations by these people, desperate people, is not because the seekers of asylum, the seekers of refuge, misunderstand these destinations as being full of kind of gold on these pavements, whatever. Compared to the other options, other destinations, these are the places where they can get across into these countries. As practical as that. So, for example, the Labour Party in the UK, what was the Labour Party in in 1992, January 1992. That was just before John Smith was kind of the leader of the Labour Party, and the crook, Neil Kinnock, was about to finish, or had just finished, destroying the Labour Party politically. And it was not long before Tony Blair became leader because of the sad demise of John Smith by heart attack. So, in the run up to the May 1997 UK election, which Tony Blair, quote, was declared to have won landslide, there are many issues that were discussed about the manifesto about what should happen in the country if the Labour Party got into power. I took part in discussions, and I took part in sending information by fax to the Labour Party, to Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson, because those two were Tony Blair's, what they created, the Rapid Response Unit. In order to rebut the Conservative lies against the Labour Party at that time, Mandelson and Alistair Campbell, say in the 1995-96, they created the Rapid Rebuttal Unit. And it worked. I had done something like that many years before, nothing to do with a party. But I had created this model, that rapid rebuttal. I would write advanced, substantial news releases for a campaign and release them in advance. And 10 out of 10 times, everything I said turned out to be correct. Now that was unparalleled in what used to be East Pakistan and has remained unparalleled to this day everywhere. And now when Peter Mandelson and Alistair Campbell created that unit, it radically lifted the status of Tony Blair's kind of opposition to the Conservatives, many, many layers and levels above what they were until that rapid rebuttal unit was started. So when I gave the presentation, I wrote it, I spoke it, and I presented this slot. I addressed this to John Major, who was in January 1992 still Prime Minister, and he was on his way shortly after that date when I broadcast this, either on the day or the day after. He was on his way to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly, because at that year's General Assembly was being chaired by the United Kingdom. It was a rota, nothing specially to be given any credit to John Major for, but that was the turn. So I wanted to make it absolutely the topmost priority. And it became the priority because it was broadcast on a UK mainstream television channel. And I said that if they solve this problem, then there would be the problem of the hunger and poverty and lack of safety and security for the individual people desperate to leave their own countries. Then there would be no nightmare being kind of stirred up among the ordinary people in the Western countries against the refugees. Now, notice this distance. I said that 30 years and 9 months ago. And this is exactly what I was talking about 30 years and 9 months ago. What this evil Suella Cruella is doing, and what Peter Brooks has captured her doing. We can do it, means we can incite the people and destroy the migrants' invasion. This is exactly the nightmare I foresaw. Now, while Tony Blair was sucking the boots of George W. Bush, these problems were getting worse and worse and worse. And instead of solving the problems in the countries of origin and across the two continents, Africa and Asia, Tony Blair and George W. Bush, the evil one, conspired with the Saudi criminals to attack the people of Iraq, to attack the people of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan lost any number of people. Afghanistan lost any number of people to the criminals attacking them from the combined attack forces of the UK and the USA states. Elderly, vulnerable people were murdered and massacred by Blair and George Ghastly Bush. And in next door Pakistan to Afghanistan, I mean, the facts are that Pakistan saved millions of Afghan people. That cannot be said about India. That cannot be said about Iran. Pakistan saved Afghanistan. And yet none of the Western commentators, none of the Western leaders, the morons, ungrateful shaitans, has ever told the truth about the role of Pakistan in saving millions of Afghans and also saving the entire subcontinent. That includes the major part of India from huge conflagration. Whoever was in power, it doesn't matter. We are not talking about Pakistan in terms of internal party, whatever. But the role of Pakistan as a state and as a people was absolutely splendid and brilliant and humanitarian. Pakistan, for that job that they did in saving millions of people of Afghans, millions of Afghans and millions of people from across India, Pakistan deserves not just thanks, but Pakistan deserves a collective recognition that it has been owed. It has been owed, and it has been owed, and it has been owed. Now, of course, I have said that for the massacres and murders and rapes of the innocent people of East Pakistan by the Pakistan Army during 1971, Pakistan has to start the process of apologizing and paying compensation and damages. I've said that, and I've said more to Imran Khan. But that's not the only thing, because that was 71. Afghanistan happened many years later. And what Pakistan did to save Afghanistan, to save the whole subcontinent, in numbers, it entailed and it involved many more people. So I said to Imran Khan in context that be proud of what the country did to save the people of Afghanistan. Okay, blame the Americans for murdering so many Pakhtuns, but be proud about what the people of Pakistan, ordinary people of Pakistan, did to save the people of Afghanistan. Iran didn't do anything remotely compared to what Pakistan did. So these are the things that can make the difference. And the people who are fleeing across the continents, fleeing persecution, hunger, denial of basic human rights, including in many cases, thousands and thousands of abused children, women, girls, sexually abused. No discussion about any of that. No discussion about any of that in the UK Parliament. And this evil Suella Cruella boasts of being a, quote, barrister. I mean, words do not exist to condemn this evil. The first thing that any person claiming to be a lawyer or knowledgeable in the law, the first thing that any person with that kind of claimed knowledge of the law would do when faced with the evidence right in front of them of violations of human rights taking place in front of them, they would rush to stop what is going on, and they would rush to also do their best to institute proceedings at the appropriate platforms, international courts and international tribunals, to bring those behind these massacres to justice. But was anyone watching my broadcast on Channel 4 in January 1992, was anyone thinking what they could do to stop the nightmare that is now? France politically is in hock to the fascist Marine Le Pen. Italy has been already given to Meloni, the fascist woman. And she has now appointed a known fascist who wore the swastika Nazi armband. And right across the Eastern European belts, if you like, there are right-wing racists mobilizing again and again. Every time they have an upset, they mobilize again and they come back. So when I said to them, to John Major has been appearing. From time to time, Major appeared like Michael Heseltine. Major appeared on the television programs decrying the Brexiteers. Major decried the Brexiteers generally and Boris Johnson in particular, as did Michael Heseltine. But neither Major nor Heseltine went beyond the narrow racist kind of parameters of the definition of European Union. Had they stopped being racist in their outlook when they were talking about Brexit, they would have understood the dimension that I had so clearly set out. Because all the European Union member countries are as hostile to African and Asian people coming into the West as refugees, asylum seekers, as are shown in the UK now in the season of hatred that has been inaugurated with the eviler Suella Cruella. In the immediate aftermath of the cyclone that affected southern Bangladesh on the 30th of April 1991, I went to the United Nations Association in London. United Nations Association in London, not inside the building, but outside the building, and I demonstrated outside the United Nations Association in London a call for helping the people of Bangladesh. And I did that in the form of a poem, which is an epic poem that I began writing sometime before that, and I called it Lines of Hunger from Bangladesh. My original epic poem. Lines of Hunger from Bangladesh, not rhymes, but lines. I had with me two individuals, one man and one woman. And at that time, I had not known about them, but only a few days before that incident had I come across them, because when I spoke to the BBC Radio 4 PM program about various things, including what happened to Bangladesh and how to help, after the Radio 4 PM program broadcast my interview, one of those people, the male one, rang the BBC and pleaded with them to get my telephone number. Now, the BBC illegally gave the telephone number. They should never have given the telephone number to that person or anybody else without my express prior informed knowledge. Now, I, in good faith, accepted the kind of statement by that man that the man to kind of help, support, etc., things that I was proposing to be done. At that time, that was, remember, it was still, it was the first or second of, the May 1991. On the 4th of May 1991, as has been typical, I managed to grab hold of somebody in the Commercial Road, and a woman from South London, about whom I shall extensively discuss another time. But she joined me as well. And I was so unprepared physically in terms of presenting a letter memorandum to number 10 Downing Street that I actually stood on the pavement of Downing Street and by hand wrote a memorandum of demands, which I was going to give to number 10 Downing Street, which was the kind of style of political representations in place at that time. Up to that time, it is no longer seen because of the internet and other things, but that is what happened. So the main demand was that the Bangladesh cyclone affected people of Bangladesh desperately needed help. And the fact that I went to the number 10 Downing Street, 3, 4, or 5 other people, was the item number 1 on the BBC's main evening news. Whether it was 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, I cannot check at this time, but when it's necessary, I shall check and update accordingly in a later edition. That edition, or the bulletin of the BBC News, was read, presented by a man who had since become known in a different capacity. He's no longer with the BBC, and I think he's a Conservative Party member. And his presentation of that edition is part of the recollection that I can make. And his name is Mitchell, Clarence Mitchell. Now, Clarence Mitchell recently has been the main media advisor, etc., to the parents of Madeleine McCann. So I've given the very clear references. Now, what happened as a result of that broadcast, showing me with us other people, demanding that the UK government give the help to the people of Bangladesh, John Major announced not long after that £50,000. Now, obviously, John Major, who had worked in banks, etc., should have known that £50,000 was absolute peanuts. If you compare to the 3 million people plus who were genocided by Winston Churchill in Bengal in 1943, I mean, where do you begin the sum? So, when John Major said the £50,000, either shortly before that petition at number 10 Downing Street or letter, or shortly after that, I then noticed that John Major had upped the UK's contribution to £5 million, 1991. Now, at that time in Bangladesh, the government in Bangladesh at that time was being fronted by Khaleda Zia. Well, I've never seen any penny of that money because it was given to the Bangladesh government. That was not the point. It was not about me seeing the money. But some people who would have been in similar position would have wanted to have a cut. Then I began the process of contacting the United Nations and contacting the Bangladesh diplomatic missions, etc. And my purpose was to create a series of steps that could be applied, put in place in the event of future water-related disasters. That is what I called. Now, that is what I did, and that is what should have happened. I don't know now to what extent what I said has been implemented by the state of Bangladesh. But I said that water should be turned into a positive resource. I'll not go into the details at this time because it will take longer, but that is the point. Now, the idea that Suella Cruella, how dare she? When I was doing that broadcast on Channel 4 in January 1992, where was she? And when I went to number 10 Downing Street on the 4th of May 1991, where the fuck was this evil cunt? How dare she? Where are the people invading Britain from? People are dying in Africa and Asia because of starvation, hunger, famine, violence, and so on. Where is this fucking cunt about any of those issues? Who are these people she is imagining? Are they invaders? Where are they coming from? She doesn't recognize any of these people as human beings. So Suella, Evilar, Cruella, doesn't deserve to be in that post, doesn't deserve even to be prosecuted. Suella, Evilar, Cruella needs to be made an exhibit in front of the world's poorest, the world's hungriest. And she should be exhibited until there is no life left in her. How many people die every day? How many people seeking asylum, refuge, help, compassion? How many people die every day? That is the number that should be on the front pages of the British newspapers. Now, what did the newspapers do on Wednesday, the 2nd of November 2000? They had a stupid, words are not enough. Moron called Matt Hancock. Where do you begin to swear? There is not enough swear words that I can use about Matt Hancock. Look at him. This git was given the diversionary role so that he would appear as the bogus, controversial kind of participant in the Big Brother house or whatever. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. That is the one. Instead of Suella, Cruella, Evilar face being on the front pages, which is what happened on the day before, Tuesday, after she spoke on the Monday. So it is Matt Hancock, whoever was in plot with him and with the media, Matt Hancock staged the diversion. That fact that he became a signatory to the upcoming show did not warrant by any means the huge pages and pages of his pictures in the tabloid papers, the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Star, the Telegraph, all the other papers. No way. So somebody was conspiring to give the diversion and appear to blame Hancock for breaking some kind of code of conduct or ministerial whatever. Rubbish. Suella Cruella was spared additional pressure by the media covering her face in that way. That became really the symbol on the papers on the day before. Now, there is no evidence. There is no evidence anywhere. There is no evidence anywhere whatsoever that people who are as desperate as the asylum seekers and the refuge seekers are, choose to be so helpless, choose to be in such vulnerable positions. There is no evidence. And everything that Suella Cruella has said against the people seeking asylum, everything she has said has broken the UK's legal obligations and duties under the treaties. Now, what I notice is that none of the newspapers, including the fucking Guardian, is pointing out that treaty obligations. And of course, none of these spiels made by Yvette Cooper or Keir Starmer, or to some extent, Mag Hillier. The three names that actually did the run during the Wednesday news, if you like, runs. They're not talking about the serious breaches of the UK's legal contracts, undertakings. Because if they did talk about those, these would completely silence the stupid idiot Sunak, who has stupidly said that she's getting on the job. Getting on with the job. What the fuck? What job? It is the point that she is not doing the job. That is the point. When the various kind of racist so-called parties in the UK were organized after Enoch Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech against immigrants, all these parties, all these so-called parties, including the so-called National Front, and then the British movement and all the rest of it, all of them disappeared not because they didn't want to persist in existence, but because they didn't have any evidence. They didn't have any evidence to support their claim that the miserable condition of the UK economy and society was being created by the migrants or immigrants. After years of saying those things, they found that the people couldn't find any evidence that that was true. That is the reason why those parties disappeared. Now we have not just an odd member of parliament. We have no other than the Home Secretary doing the job of the British National Front, the British movement, and other assorted fascists. And if you include the descriptions ascribed to this man, if not attributed, because he's being mentioned in the days after he apparently died in his car. This man who threw the 3 petrol bombs at the Dover Center had messed up brain. He had messed up his mind. He said, I mean, High Wycombe is not a place where too many migrants live, if there are any, actually. So he said that the benefits, that the migrants are taking the benefits, but they could not speak English. And he said, how are they going to look for jobs? Now, what a fucking stupid collection of moronic idiocies. Benefits, by definition, are no benefits at all. Whether people are black or whether people are indigenous white, the sum of money that is called benefits is completely it's misleading. It's penalty. And the ordeal that people have to go through before getting hold of the money would constitute a nightmare, unbearable nightmare for many. And as happened under the regime of David Cunt Cameron and Ian Dracula Duncan Smith, the people that were in the most vulnerable positions couldn't work, couldn't even travel, couldn't even walk. Many of those people were wrongly demonized and blamed for making up their disabilities and their conditions and their health conditions. When they were being demonized, they were also being denied their basic benefits. So they were put on starvation, forced to starve, and many of them starved and others committed suicide. This is part of the actual evidence of what Suella Braverman is doing as her job. And this shit boy, Rishi Sunak, who has boasted that he never had a working class friend or he never met a working class person in his life. How the fuck does he talk about Suella Fernandez doing her job, getting on with their job? Because doing the job in that department, deprivation, want, and poverty creation, DWP, getting on with the job of the DWP is to incite people to hate the most vulnerable people and to deny the most vulnerable people their basic, absolutely basic amount for survival, which many of them never lived to get hold of because they are put on a punishment circus that they go through months and months of punishing, questioning. So the world needs an organization like an active United Nations. How many people are, let's say, on the accessible websites, how many people are categorized at this time, at this date, as being asylum seekers or refugees? Let's see. How many people are migrants, let's say? So it says human migration is the movement of people from one place to another with intentions of settling permanently or temporarily at a new location. The movement often occurs over long distances and from one country to another. All right. Let's see the statistics. How many people do they say are currently migrants? Let's say. So the whole world is absolutely agog about migrants. And leading among the sources of the information okay, so this is the table that shows that international migrants 1970 to 2015 and migrants as a percentage of the world's population and the number of migrants. Now, in 1970, the number of migrants, according to this table, was 84,460,125. We just said 4 million. That year, the percentage of migrants, the percentage of the world's population, was put 2.3. Now that is 1970. Now I broadcast my program on Channel 4 in January 1992. So at that time, it would be 2.9% of the population, and the total number would be between 152 million to 160 million when I broadcast on Channel 4 in January 1992. And in 2015, it has increased the number of migrants 243 million. And the percentage of the world's population who are migrants is 3.3%. And almost half of these migrants are women. One of the most significant migrant pattern changes in the last half century. Women migrate alone or with their family members and community. Even though female migration is largely viewed as an association rather than independent migration, emerging studies argue complex and manifold reasons for this. And so therefore there are these various countries: United States, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Russian Federation, United Kingdom, etc., etc. All these countries. In the same year, the top countries of origin, now look at that. The top countries of origin were India, Mexico, China, Russian Federation, Syrian Arab Republic, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Philippines, Afghanistan, Indonesia. So these are the basic things. 200 million, 300 million. I would say now it is not 250 million, it's like 500 million or so. And the billions of people that are migrants remit money back to their countries. India is the top one. 80 billion American dollars, which is 2.80% of the GDP of India's GDP. And the same applies to Pakistan and Bangladesh. I mean, lower, a higher kind of percentage. Pakistan is 5.57, and Bangladesh 5.73%. So these countries, all of these countries, like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, because in our context they're in the subcontinent, but other countries in the regions, these countries are aware of the phenomenal role played by the migrants. So where is any evidence of these countries' governments in the context of the hatred that Suella Cruella Ibila is spewing and inciting against the people of origins of Indian and Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other countries? There is no evidence. The Albanian head of state or head of government who has spoken on Wednesday against Suella Cruella Ibila is a very rare intervention by a head of government in defense of the collective image of the people of his country being demonized by the lies of Suella Ibila. So there is a lot. There is a lot of evidence. There is absolute piles and piles and mountains of evidence that far from the people crossing the channel constituting an invasion of any country, these people are desperate, no other word for it, and everyone is letting them down. And one of the most corrupt and the worst offenders in violating the legal obligations owed to these people, these very people who are called the invaders. The worst offending country is the United Kingdom. And the worst offender, perpetrator, as the incumbent in the post of the Home Secretary, is this eviler Suella Cruella. So she should be tried at The Hague for crimes against humanity, inciting hatred against millions of innocent people. She should be tried at The Hague. So this is something that was not heard in the UK Parliament on Wednesday when they talked about the so-called Prime Minister's questions. Not during Tuesday, which was the day that saw the coverage of Suella Ibila spieling on Monday. And in the spiel, she lied. She gave false statistics and data. Because of the incitement against the refugees spread by Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, the Manston Centre in Kent has always been under severe hostile attention. And both the Kent County Council and the Surrey County Council have been actively colluding in the propaganda of hatred against the refugees and migrants that has taken place long before Suella Cruella came anywhere near being made a minister, let alone being made the Home Secretary. And none of the members of Parliament, from any of the other constituencies, though constituencies have significant Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian voters, none of these MPs has said, as far as I can see at this moment, at this stage, none of these MPs has said a single thing against the lies and the incitement that Suella Cruella is spouting. The only member of Parliament that has actually gone on the record and has correctly condemned Suella is Roger Gale, in whose constituency the Manston Centre is. And the other member of Parliament, who is a Conservative as well, is Jake Berry. Now, Berry was sacked by the stupid boy Sunak. As part of Sunak's dirty, filthy, opportunistic deal with Suella Cruella. And so the Roger Gale, as the constituency MP for the Manston Centre, and Jake Berry as the senior Conservative who upset Suella Cruella, have been the only two MPs that have spoken against her. And from the opposition front bench, of course, they've staged rubbery, plasticky kind of condemnation of Suella Cruella. They have not talked about the international situation, and they have not come anywhere near talking about what I've been saying for 32 years or 30 years, let's say, in the context of the broadcast that I made on the Channel 4 news in January 1992. So despite the fact that there is an air of satisfaction in the propaganda aspect of Keir Starmer-fronted Labour Party, they have not actually exposed Suella Cruella. After this broadcast, they should be doing everything that I have been saying here. They should actually take on board, and they should put together an updated, rigorous campaigning demand for the prosecution, for the sacking and the prosecution of Suella Cruella. As for Rishi Sunak as the Prime Minister, as I said, Rishi Sunak, when he came across first time in the period, say weeks before the actual Brexit referendum that was staged in June 2016, this boy was put up by the Brexiteers to appear on the BBC politics show or politics program, lunchtime program, fronted by Joe Coburn on the BBC television, BBC Two. And he made several appearances on that program. Judging by the contents of what he said, he was not very bright, was he? He was most certainly did not come across as bright, intelligent. What he did come across was a sucker who was sucking up to whoever he thought was going to be the leading kind of influence in the Conservative Party, and he was kind of oiling his way. And he did. A thing about Jo Coburn, she's not very bright either, is she? So we've got a so-called politics program that is staged during the midday, and most often on Wednesdays when the so-called Prime Minister's questions is staged. They've got an edition going before it starts airing just before the Prime Minister questions get going. And then immediately after it finishes, they then do a kind of so-called aftermath review. At no stage, at no point, or no date has Jo Coburn produced an original analysis about British politics, about British corruption, etc., etc. And there is nothing. There is absolute no word about the massive corruption and the criminal takeover of the police forces. Anywhere, in the BBC or anywhere. The media, the print papers have produced some, mainly the Times and the Daily Mail. Both have given front page coverage to the Metropolitan Police being taken over by criminals and sex offenders and the others. But as a general mainstream kind of platforms, all the others have ignored this. Now, think about that. The crime rate, if you look at the statistics of the police behavior, the police kind of taking action on crimes reported to them, it is not there. I mean, you can't say that 2 cases out of 100 amounts to anything, can you? But that's what is happening. The real statistic, the real police reality of policing in the UK is absent. And yet in his first Prime Minister's questions, last Wednesday, not yesterday, well, this idiot boy, Rishi Sunak, said that Suella Braverman was going to put 20,000 police on the streets of the UK tackling crime. Fuck off, you liars. Police don't tackle crimes, as the statistics show. Now, if Starmer and his so-called frontbenchers had any closer relationship with the evidence and the facts than Sunak, then they would have immediately stood up and condemned Sunak for the audacity of lying so brazenly. But they didn't. We are doing it. We are doing it. If you look at the Guardian, pretentious Guardian, I mean, its editorial about Lula in Brazil is so stupid. It misses all the main points about the real achievement of Lula. I mean, it's not only stunning, it's absolutely historic. So much has to be said for Lula in Brazil. Because Lula, if he's well, because he's at age 77, he may not be very well, but if Lula is allowed a reasonable health for another few years, he can begin the process of reversing the fascist shitboy Bolsonaro and save the Amazon forests and the other aspects of the Brazilian environment and save the world. It should be Lula's victory in Brazil should be celebrated as a victory for absolutely the whole world. at a very critical time when the world is being taken over by criminals like Sula, like Suella, Cruella, Evila, and Melonia in Italy and other parts of the world. I mean, in Pakistan, Imran Khan is probably, I mean, this has been 5 or 6 days of the long march across Pakistan, and he has successfully held the long march, unprecedented in the history of the subcontinent. There has been nothing like this politically anywhere in the subcontinent. So that shows that the people are prepared. People in Pakistan, despite all kinds of adverse weather condition and others problems, people are prepared to do the march and to really establish democracy and accountability. That 25-year-old television reporter, she was not killed by Imran Khan's marchy fuckers. The liars are saying that Imran Khan's long march killed that girl. It didn't. It was a genuine accident because she fell under one of the containers. How could anyone see it? There are hundreds of thousands of people there. And Imran Khan, including his colleagues, have genuinely been overcome with emotion and sadness at the loss of that young person. So, what has happened in Pakistan never happened in the 75 years. The Imran Khan has done this. Now he has to do a lot more, but that so far he has done the impossible to get these people to follow him in his jalsas, the rallies, for 5 months, and then to take part in this week-long long march is a stunning victory. And all the Western liars against Pakistan, including Joe Biden, the idiot, that said that Pakistan is not democratic, they should stop the lie. And they should say that it's not the people of Pakistan that have been at fault, that Pakistan has not had a stable, consistent, continuous democracy. Of course, I personally have a lot of demands on Imran Khan's and leadership about what happened in 1971, and I want all the victims of the civilian victims that were attacked by the Pakistan army in 71 to be compensated, and full historic apology being given to every single one of them, the survivors, by Imran Khan and the movement. Pakistan ka matlab kya? This is the thing. East Pakistan, what is now Bangladesh now, is the main Pakistan. The driving power for Pakistan came from East Pakistan. And the liberation, the freedom, the independence from the British must be established as the freedom for the whole of the people of the subcontinent. Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Muslims, Hindus, Brahmins, Buddhists, whatever, and the millions, hundreds of millions of people who are so-called untouchables. That is the real goal, in my view. The whole of the subcontinent must be given the fruits of independence. And the likes of Biden and other Western so-called imperialists should be told by all these countries, fuck off. None of them should have any business in poking, either in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in India or anywhere else. Let the people of the subcontinent solve their problems, settle them. And they can do it, they have the capacity. And if the people are behind them, which they will be, none of the Kashmir problems or the other problems should detain us, should hold us back. That is the vision that I see, and Imran Khan should actually go towards that goal, not just the goal of getting rid of the crooks, the shaitans, the chur and daku, the sharifs and the zardaris. All the crooks and criminals, including Modi the criminal, should be ousted and removed and replaced by democratically installed leaders and servants of the people in all three countries, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. What happened in Morbi? Morbi in Gujarat. Let's hear a bit about Morbi in Gujarat. Hear it from me. Morbi is a part of Gujarat, which is also the home state of the liar Narendra Modi. Now, on Sunday, last Sunday, there were children on the bridge, the Morbi suspension bridge called Jultu Phul, that is hanging bridge. Now, according to various reports, that bridge, which was built in the 19th century by the British, has been in precarious states of disrepair for a very long time. And before this massacre happened, 7 days before the massacre happened, a local contractor claimed to have done the repairs. It turns out that they lied. Instead of doing the serious structural safeguarding and repairs, they put paints on the various parts of the building, in the bridge. And its capacity at the best of times was 150 people. On Sunday, there were anything between 400 to 500 people on it. No way could that bridge stay. It collapsed. Now remember what happened there, right? Now, a few hundred miles away from the Morbi collapse, Narendra Modi was posing with a company called Airbus. And the contract was with a local Indian kind of set of manufacturers and constructors, whatever. Because India was considered by Airbus to be a good bargain. All right? But Modi then gave a speech in which he said that the fact that Airbus had chosen India showed that India was reliable, futuristic, dependable for solid, predictable manufacturing standards. Can you believe that? And 100 miles away or 200 miles away from that place to Morbi, no dependency, no dependability, no predictability, no solidity. It was complete and utter massacre, collapse of the bridge, murdering hundreds of Indians, children, women. How did the fucking Modi put this in his fucking stupid brain that India, which is the world's numerically largest contributor to mass deaths because of poor infrastructure, every single year, thousands of people die across India because of poor manufacture, bad manufacture, bad safety records and standards. And Modi is not held to account because the media is in complete complicity with the stupid BJP and the various other parts of the so-called alliance. How the fuck? How is it that Modi is spared the wrath of millions of Indians who have been bereaved because of his lying? The railways are unsafe. The waterways are unsafe. The rivers are full of sewage and sewage and sewage. And on the ordinary roads, there are buses that collide, the buses that actually fall, and literally thousands of people die across India because of this. And yet, Modi on Sunday was boasting that India was futuristic. And he was saying that that is why Airbus made a contract for constructing Airbus planes in India. Now, these two events, Modi boasting about Airbus and India being stable and futuristic, and the massacre, of course, they didn't call it massacre. The massacre, I call it the massacre of the children and the women and the other people on the doing the Diwali celebration on the bridge. These two stories were printed, for fuck's sake, on the front page, side by side, by the Times of India. Now, the so-called editors of the fucking Times of India, did they have no eyes? Did they have no brains? Did the fuckers not see how cruel and how absurd and stupid and crazy were the contrasting stories there? Now, the day after, the fucking Times of India continued in its degenerate praise of the liar Modi. And it said, it started the sentence with the words, teary-eyed Prime Minister Modi. Teary-eyed, fuck off. Modi has always been a criminal. But the criminal has been allowed to stage on a daily basis, 24 hours, 24/7, various poses as an actor. He goes to the people where people are mourning the massacred victims of the Morbi disaster massacre. And he is reported as having been teary-eyed. What fucking difference does it make whether Modi was teary-eyed or cheery-eyed? Because he was teary-eyed when he was boasting about the Airbus contract. Had he no idea that while he was boasting about India being stable and futuristic, anywhere in the huge country, there could be disasters happening, massacres happening. But there is no outlet in India that is actually raising the questions about Modi. I mean, I have access to the English language mainstream, and I have a subsidiary, secondary access to the Hindi language mainstream. But there is no evidence that they have cottoned on to the fact that Modi is a crafty little bastard who should not be there in that post. Nobody has done anything. The only opposition people that are anywhere heard ever kind of to raise questions about Modi, of course, is led by Mamata Banerjee in Kolkata in West Bengal. But she's just one person out of so many, so many states. Nobody else is saying anything about Modi, the liar, the criminal. It's only Mamata Banerjee. So what we have in the behavior of Suella, Evila, Cruella, is that she has no idea about the world. She has absolutely no idea about the world. And she goes on against the UK government giving too many visas to Indians. Now that is something very significant. If she had any sympathy for the people who desperately, very badly needed the visas, etc., and if she had sympathies with the people in poverty and lack of homes and the other needs, she would not have condemned India, for sending so many people. She should have said that if there is an opportunity for legitimate Indian people to come to the UK, then the UK should be grateful for that interest by the Indians. Because India is the biggest part of the Raj, the empire. Remember, Churchill massacred 3 million Bengalis in 1943. That has not been atoned for, that has not been actually apologized for, and that should be dealt with by the British. The 3 million Bengalis in 1943, the British government should actually apologize for and start the process of compensating any remaining survivors of the 1943 massacre caused by Winston Churchill. So I'm saying to Imran Khan, and I'm saying to the UK government, to do the same thing like for 1971 and 1943. And Suella, Cruella, Evila should be put on trial at The Hague. And Sunak should be forced to resign. And the United Kingdom should have an election. A proper, fair, democratic election. And Starmer should be forced. Starmer should be forced to bring back Jeremy Corbyn into the Labour Party. And Starmer should not flaunt the likes of Rachel Reeves and other assorted morons who are unfit. Starmer should be made if he gets enough votes to form a government that is unknown, unprecedented. And he should have a government not made up of members of parliament or members of the House of Peers, but members of the public who defend the community, defend society. What Dominic Cummings said, the weirdos. Ordinary people, activists, campaigners, truth tellers. And they should be building alliances among the ordinary democratic people. And Starmer should scrap the HS2 and other criminal projects. As for Shamima Begum and her two school friends that were trafficked from Tower Hamlets in 2015, they should be compensated for. And the Supreme Court criminals should be forced to retract their criminal racist ruling against Shamima Begum. And Shamima Begum should be given her citizenship. So we should be talking about that and other issues in more detail in the next available edition. This is now just 7 minutes to 2 hours. So we should be calling an end to this particular edition, which is 2:48 GMT on Thursday, the 3rd of November 2022.